Hi everyone, welcome to HubShots episode 312. In this episode, we're going to answer a question that a lot of people ask us. Should you build your website on HubSpot? I'm going to cover some of the things like pricing, usability, reporting, SEO. Those are some of the questions that we get asked. So this whole episode is really to help you make a choice about should you or shouldn't you consider using HubSpot. And at the end, we'll give you some of our thoughts. And if you really want the nitty-gritty detail, we actually went through HubSpot's Content Hub in detail, and there's a great download that you can watch and you can utilize when making a choice. But Craig, let's dive right in. Well, let's talk about some of the scenarios whether you should build your website on HubSpot.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the question, should you build your website on HubSpot? Well, the answer is it depends. Do you remember back in the day, SEO, like how long will it take to rank in SEO? It depends. It used to be that cliched response. No one could give a definitive answer. So should you build your website on HubSpot? It depends. And I think scenarios is where we should start. And you alluded to our chat last year, which was in depth around Content Hub. We talked about features at length. We're going to reverse it this time and actually just start with scenarios. What's your scenario? Before we even get into features and technical stuff, what's your scenario? Because you and I both used to build a lot of stuff in WordPress over the years,
Yes.
Ian, probably hundreds of websites, I would say, over the last decade and more.
Yep.
You and I both switched to using HubSpot exclusively probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Correct.
Time flies. It's now, probably 5 years. And why did we do that? Because our scenario is probably different to some of our listeners, but it also might be one that people can relate to. So look, there's lots of big reasons that we're going to go through. All those things you mentioned earlier, hosting, security, all that kind of stuff built in. But if you think about the scenarios, we kind of broke and listed down some of the common scenarios. So I'll just walk through those, and listeners, you can think about, is this the scenario you're in? So first, easy ones for great fit scenarios for HubSpot, marketing sites and sales sites. So what do I mean marketing sites? Kind of websites. They might be lead gen, landing pages, microsites, conference sites, all those kind of things. Any of those kind of marketing sites, perfect fit for HubSpot. What about sales sites where you're walking people through, they book in a meeting, talk to the sales reps, get collateral, walk them along the customer journey? HubSpot is fantastic, great fit for that. What about some other scenarios? And this often comes up, especially when we're talking about WordPress. And by the way, we're going to kind of compare WordPress to HubSpot this episode, aren't we, Ian? Because that's the main kind of situation we find ourselves in. But as you've mentioned in the show notes here, look, it could be Squarespace or Webflow. There's a ton of other CMS tools, but I'm going to talk about WordPress. But let's say your scenario is we need to have an e-commerce store as part of it. So this is a common scenario. We'll say, look, you're not going to build your e-commerce store on HubSpot. You're probably going to use WooCommerce, and that could be as part of your WordPress site. Or these days, it's mainly Shopify that we find clients are using. So they have a HubSpot plus Shopify piece. That's really good. What about LMSs, learning management systems? Is HubSpot a fit for that? Well, it can be, but usually not. We think there's better platforms out there, Teachable, Kajabi, there's others. What about community sites? Not a fit for HubSpot. Circle, School, and there's others. And there's a reason we've actually started building the HubShots community on another platform called School. We're big proponents of HubSpot, but we just felt School is better for the community aspects. You could talk about membership sites, and you can build those in HubSpot, but depending on requirements, there might be other platforms that are a bit of better fit. So that's a discussion. There's a whole bunch of others, user-generated content site, news and media sites, portals, intranets. We won't go into all of them. One I will call out, though, is huge sites. And what do I mean by a huge site? More than 1,000 pages. I'm not talking about blog posts. HubSpot will happily have thousands of blog posts. But if you've got thousands of web pages, HubSpot might not be a fit because it just becomes a little bit overwhelming to manage. We've kind of worked with government departments in the past where they have tens of thousands of pages, and they have those big enterprise content management systems for that. I wouldn't be using HubSpot as a fit for that. So I think starting with the scenario is the first step anyone should go through when they're considering, should I use HubSpot? That's kind of an introduction there. What's your thoughts on that part, Ian?
I think you've summed it up really well, Craig. And listeners, as we go through, we're going to share some personal experiences, stories that we have, just so you understand. Like Craig said, we both come from a technical background. We have been building sites since the early 2000s or even before, tinkering around. And so we have experienced many platforms over the years. And so this really gives us a good sense of our breadth of understanding and really sharing with you some of the personal experiences. So don't take that as gospel, but we're just going to share what we have learned in our journey over the years. All right, so let's start with cost and pricing, because this is often the first thing that comes up, Craig. And I think a common misconception that people have is that WordPress is free, right? Yes, it's free to use because it is open source, but you still need to put it somewhere. It needs to run somewhere. So it's like let's call your hosting like renting a house. Like you want to rent a house in a good place that has good amenities, has good infrastructure. You know, your water's going to be running, you're going to have electricity. And if you're in a good neighborhood, you know things are going to run. If something breaks, it'll get fixed. Same thing goes for website hosting. You've got to make sure you've got a good neighborhood, things are working, things are moving quickly. So with WordPress, you got to pay for good hosting. Could be managed, could be dedicated, can range from $50 to $500 a month, depending on your traffic, depending on how much storage you need. But really imperative, get good hosting. So that's the cost of WordPress. Now, Craig, tell us about HubSpot.
So HubSpot has 3 different pricing models for Content Hub. And whenever we say Content Hub, that's what you need to build your website on HubSpot. For web pages, you're using Content Hub. Now, it starts at the starter version at $15 a month. So you can get a very functional marketing or sales website in place for $15 US per month. And we have some clients, even medium-sized businesses, that have built their entire website on Content Hub Starter. So that's where it starts. Now, it can scale up at the enterprise level. There's Starter, and there's also Pro, and then there's Enterprise. In this episode, we're not going to break down the features or what the differences are. You can go to our earlier episode 307 for the full breakdown. We're just going to talk about the pricing difference. And I want to make a comment because Enterprise will go up to potentially $1,500 US per month for Content Hub Enterprise. So that's an enterprise website. So how do you consider $15 up to $1,500? And I want to make a comment here because I think at the lower end, it's just a no-brainer. I don't think there's I think it's cheaper actually to use HubSpot for that starter. As you said, good hosting on WordPress is probably $20, $30 at least a month. HubSpot has it all for $15. At the enterprise level, I've never really heard people complain about the price because they're comparing it to other enterprise website systems out there that are probably multiples of that cost. So $1,500 actually potentially puts people off. They think it's so cheap for an enterprise content management system. So that's never really a concern. Where we do get pushback though is in the middle around the Pro, because that's around $450 a month for Content Hub Professional. That's US dollars, by the way. And so people sometimes balk at that because they're like, now they're comparing that to the WordPress hosting. Oh, $450 per month for Content Hub Professional versus $45 for WordPress hosting. So that's where the conversation can get stuck. So not at the starter end, not at the enterprise end, but in the middle and the Pro. And so that's when you need to think about, but what else are you getting with Content Hub Professional? I won't go into what those differences are now, but that's where it really comes in around pricing. Do you find that as well? Yeah. What's your kind of experience with getting pushback around pricing?
I think you're absolutely right, Craig, and you nailed that, because at the two ends, it makes sense, but in the middle, it can seem like it is a bit of a stretch. But I think, like you rightly said, you have to be really clear on what it's not just, let's call it, it's not just a website anymore. There are other tools in Content Hub that you have to consider that potentially will be saving you time, money, and effort in the whole process. So
I'll just make one more comment about the Pro tiering at $450. I actually think it's better when you're buying Marketing Hub Pro and Content Hub Pro together. I think they call it the Marketing Plus pack.
That's
because
right.
then it's very affordable. So if you're just buying Content Hub Professional on its own, yeah, there's a decision there. But quite often you've got Marketing Hub already, and then you combine it. It's actually a very good offer.
That's right. I'm going to talk about some additional costs that sometimes people may or may not be aware of. With WordPress, you can spend money on themes. Again, they can range from $50 up to, I'm sure, even thousands of dollars there. And plugins as well, from anywhere from $10 up to $200 a year. And then developer costs for customization. HubSpot, on the other hand, is very similar in terms of you can buy a theme for $200 or you can buy a theme for $1,500. And then there are modules. I haven't seen too many people buy modules that we know of. There are some that might be useful, but generally what we tend to find, if you use great themes, like Clean, like Power, that Craig and myself both use, they will generally build great modules into the theme that does things. They often get updated regularly. There's new features that get rolled out. For example, with Power, they rolled out in the European Union. Apparently, there's a lot to around accessibility. So they've actually rolled that out in the theme. That got pushed today. And it's all around accessibility. And so I was editing a site and I was like, oh, wow, I can now do all of this stuff. It came with a theme. Now, I'm sure if you had to pay someone to implement that or use a system to implement those features, that's an additional cost. But our one-time purchase of the theme has been a really great experience with those guys. And it's the same with Helpful Hero. Like Kevin at Helpful Hero keeps rolling out new features, new bug fixes, making things better, always listening to people's feedback. And that's what I love about it. And so just be aware of that when you're buying themes. Had another scenario today, had a customer moving on to Content Hub, had one of the team look at all these themes and they came back with these themes. And I went and I just had a look at them and I went, they look great, right? But we know that looking great and performing great are two different things. I looked at the number of modules that there were, the number of templates, so you could easily do things quickly. How is it being managed? So one of the themes that I discovered, it wasn't actually connected into HubSpot. It was like you get the file and you've got to upload the theme. I'm like, so then what happens with updates, right? What do you do? I'm assuming it's a manual process. Like that's another process someone has to go through. So I was like, okay, well that's one block that I was having. And then I just kind of looked at the version history. That was the other thing that I saw. I was like, okay, when did they update it? Has it been like 2 years? There was one theme, there was almost like 2 years gap. There were no updates. And I'm like, that's pretty odd to me because in the world of technology, you can always improve, make things faster, better, leaner. And that I didn't see that happening. So I think I might have even gone off track. But anyway.
That's okay. We were talking about costs and it did remind me, I wanted to talk about costs because in WordPress, it can creep up on you. For example, there's always a page builder. What's that page builder? I've forgotten the one, but there was WP
Bakery or that's the one that's built in. I think the one that people often use is called, I'm having a mental blank.
Me too. But anyway, there's Page Builder and that had an annual fee. Correct. And then they were using a form builder and that had an annual fee. Correct. Then they had some kind of cookie management system that had an annual fee. And it had
that's right. The slider has an annual fee.
Yeah, and that's right, the slider. And it's like, oh, well, who's paying for this? Does the client? Do we as the agency? All this kind of thing.
Yes.
And then, they haven't actually renewed it for another year. So you don't get updates. So there was a security bot. And it just used to drive me nuts. And then I'm like, hang on, HubSpot's got that in. You know what? It's form builder, all built in. Don't pay for that. Page builder, all built in. Cookie management, all built in. A/B testing. No, don't need a plug-in for that. All built in. So as you said, things like sliders and all that. That's the other thing that used to get me. You'd install a WordPress theme and look, great, here's this slider. It's come with the free version of the slider tool. Then you've got to upgrade to Pro. That's another. Yeah. So all of those hidden costs, I think, just need to be accounted for. And I'm not saying, that means it's not an option. Sure, stick with WordPress if you've got that, but don't then come and tell me, it's much cheaper than using HubSpot because you've just neglected to take into account all these other costs. Is there anything else on price we need to chat about? We've talked about hosting, we've talked about add-ons and modules.
Yeah, I think we'll be diving a little bit into each of those as we go through. So we've kind of split this show up into separate sections so you can go through. So we're going to talk about usability management now, Craig. Now, what do you want to talk about in terms of usability between WordPress and HubSpot?
Well, let's just focus on HubSpot here. I really like its page builder.
Yes.
And I like that the page builder experience is consistent across not only pages, but also emails and other areas of HubSpot. And I was chatting with a client this morning, actually, and they were talking, about designing and things that they do. And they were saying, our designer, they're really good, but they don't like working in HubSpot because the design tools, they don't think they're very good. I was like, that seems a bit strange. Let me just check the templates you're using. Anyway, it turns out they're on templates from years ago.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to mention this because admittedly, I think a couple of years ago, HubSpot was behind.
Yes.
In their page builder, there was like custom coded themes and templates, or they weren't themes at that stage, they were templates. No. The emails were custom coded. Correct. They were very inflexible. And so if you've been on HubSpot for a number of years, you might be kind of caught in the past with that old experience. So just be aware their page builder now is very intuitive and a beautiful experience to use, and that's consistent across emails and pages.
That is a very good point you brought up, Craig, because we have a few customers like that where they've had new people join the team and they said, this is so hard to update. And then I realized, yes, your website was built like 6 years ago and does not have the new drag and drop features. And I also want to highlight a great theme that's being built, right? And you utilize that page builder experience is so much nicer in terms of its effectiveness to do different things. I'll give you an example. Customer bought another theme, and what had happened was they used it for a particular site. The person that built the theme has now stopped developing that and has built a newer theme, right? So I was like, well, I think this one has stopped. I think you need to upgrade to this new theme that they're now focusing on, which is fair enough. Like everybody makes choices about stuff. In the interim, to get something sorted, because they run events, so they had to have different logos. So I then said, okay, well, let's use this company that built this theme. Let's use their free version, right? So I downloaded that just to get them out of a pickle to get things done. When using the free theme, there were only certain things you could change or choose, right? So there was very limited functionality. And then they were like, can't I change that? I'm like, no, I can't center this. I can't put the logo in the center. It's always going to be on this side. And then what happened was we ended up upgrading, buying the new theme with all of the functionality. And you just realize the massive jump in the functionality that's available. So even in the new theme, even though we had created the child theme for one of their event sites, and they went, we want to create a landing page for this particular thing. In the landing page, I could go and override the logo and change the logo. I couldn't do that in the free theme. And so I was like, well, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the ability to do things fast and flexibly. And that's the big difference between something free and starter versus something that's more professional and advanced, that's actually maintained.
It's such a good point. I actually want to just extend, I just kind of echo what you've said there, but extend. But I will say from the customer's point of view, I kind of understand how that can be frustrating. But from our view, it's like, you're paying for HubSpot, let's say paying for Content Hub or Marketing Pro, or, it's not an inexpensive tool. There's a reasonable investment each month in the cost.
Correct.
But then if you say, but I'm only going to use free themes from the marketplace, you're kind of hindering your own use. You've got this great product to use, but you're just limiting it with it. So definitely spend the money to buy proper themes like Clean or Power, etc. Yeah. Rather than cost $1,000, let's say, but you'll recoup that in just a couple of months of save time and lack of frustration.
That's exactly right.
I really think that's the first thing that we would recommend. But I do empathize with the HubSpot customers who buy the product, and HubSpot pushes the marketplace. They push all these free things, like so free to get started. The experience is actually really bad. You install some free piece, free theme, and it is inflexible. It kind of makes HubSpot look limited, but it's not. It's just the theme.
That's correct.
And so from the customer's perspective, I don't know, apart from education, I really don't know how to kind of get them over that hump, because once you've done that, if you've used a free theme, you can't edit it, you're like, wow, this is a terrible system. I can totally empathize with that. So just something to be aware of.
All right, let's talk about management. I think this comes back to about how the systems manage. If you're on WordPress, there are managed hosts, which are well worth the money paying for, that keep your plugins up to date. Now in HubSpot, we never worry about any of those things because security and management of the core system is managed by the team, and they've got a security team in place. And we'll talk about security coming up. Let's talk about functionality and customization, Craig.
Yeah, in a sec, can I just, on that management piece, here's the
Yes.
thing I just want to say. Yep, all the updates and security are handled by HubSpot, even at that starter tier. In fact, even at their free tier, you get all of that security hardening and management and performance, even at that starter tier. It's not like you have to buy enterprise for that. Yep, let's jump on shot 4.
All right. So customization comparison. I think one of the things that you will notice with WordPress, it's highly customizable, right? You can choose the themes, the plugins, you can build your custom themes, you can do custom coding, you can use WooCommerce to extend it to be a shop. So there's lots of flexibility in that perspective. When we talk about HubSpot, on the other hand, can seem restrictive, but I think it's about knowing what you want to do and how you want to do it. So like we said earlier, well-built themes like Clean and Power will make life and customization a lot easier for you. And the drag and drop builder just works. Like the ability to build with great modules, sections, save a section, reuse a section makes a massive difference in the ability. And I'll give you a little example, and I think I put it in the show notes somewhere, Craig, or maybe not even in this section. Like marketing managers or people that manage websites can do things 10 times quicker because they have the tools and they have the guardrails instead of waiting for somebody else to do updates or to drive certain delivery. And I think that's what you're paying for here. You're paying for speed to market. You're paying for the ability to get things done fast. And that's where I think HubSpot really shines. Okay, let's talk about design and functionality. Now, most people will say, I'm pretty sure you can't do that in HubSpot. If you don't know and you look at a website, do you actually know what platform it's built in? I'm pretty sure most people don't, because HubSpot, along with every other website provider, can make a website look exactly like it's supposed to be designed, right? And so that is the, let's call it the front end of everything. And then we have the whole functioning on the back end with everything. So in terms of design, there is probably nothing that you can't do on any other platform that you can do inside HubSpot. So be aware of that. Don't let that hold you back, because a few months ago I had a customer say to me, oh, I love all of these transitions. Why can't it do that? Why can't HubSpot do that? It's not HubSpot. It's actually the features of HTML and all of the language that actually makes that happen. So I think if you understand that this is industry wide and that doesn't drive the platform, but that's more of the aesthetics and how things operate, and that's available across the board. What else might you consider, Craig, when you're talking about design and functionality?
Look, I think you've pretty much covered it, actually. It does, I think, have a reputation for being a bit limited, but I think that can apply to any platform you're on, as you've said.
Exactly.
It's the skill of the developers involved, and also expense, because we're getting more requests these days for those what we call garnish, website garnish, those little flourishes and little fade in, fade out, little effects. And we're like, sure, but that adds to the expense. And so I think part of the problem is sometimes people go, oh, can't do it in HubSpot because you couldn't do it for me really inexpensively. It's like, okay, that's actually, it requires development or a bit of JavaScript here and things like that. So I think that's the thing. Are you balancing cost with flexibility as well?
Now, when I talk about functionality, I want to highlight one thing, Craig, that is probably a big thing between WordPress and HubSpot. Is your ability to, if you're on the professional tier up, is your ability to A/B test, or what's the other test that they were doing now?
Like multivariate, you mean?
No, it's got some other name. But anyway, it's A/B test, and then there's something to do with AI testing now as well in the system. The ability to test different call to actions as well. And the other big thing is personalization. That is the big difference. You can't do that natively inside WordPress. And so those are probably the 3 key differences that you would consider when you're thinking about functionality between the 2 platforms.
We go through that in a fair bit of detail in that Content Hub overview guide. So make sure you download that. 80-page PDF we produced at the time goes into it in quite some detail. All
right, Craig, on to another question that people ask us. What is SEO and performance like on HubSpot compared to WordPress?
Let's talk about this through a couple of lenses. The SEO tools, I think HubSpot's SEO tools are really good. Do they have super advanced SEO? No, there's probably a few things missing compared to, say, an advanced tool in WordPress like Rank Math or Yoast SEO, but it's pretty close. I've never had a marketing manager chat with say, oh, it doesn't have this SEO piece. More often than not, they're like, oh, I don't know SEO. Can you show me? So that's our typical situation with clients. It's never been a problem. And I can tell you, you and I have both done a fair bit of SEO in the past. I wouldn't call myself an SEO expert these days, but for a while there, that's how I started. I was an SEO consultant. So a lot of the stuff I'm seeing in HubSpot now it's actually there. It's world-class, the SEO tools. And we actually have a whole course coming out in our HubShots community actually later this month, just focused on the SEO tools in HubSpot. So check that out if you want to get the details. So that comparison, I think it's on par. And the other area that comes up is speed and performance. This often comes under the SEO category. They're like, oh, SEO, part of SEO is speed. And I agree with that. No one wants a slow site, of course. But often there can be trade-offs between speed and functionality. So if you've got a very heavy site, it's got all kinds of calculators and interactions on the page, that'll slow it down. If you're embedding Google Tag Manager and it's inserting a whole lot of scripts, that will probably slow it down. Got nothing to do with whether you're on WordPress or whether you're on HubSpot. It's about kind of some of the functionality and the third-party scripts you're running. And I was just going to call out, we actually had a client, we pushed their site from WordPress over to HubSpot last year. They came to us recently, they were saying, oh, the performance of our HubSpot site is low. We ran it through an SEO tool and it gave a low score. I've actually put screenshots in the show notes about this. They're like, oh, it's getting an E. It's only a 40% performance on GT metrics and things like that. I'm like, wow, that's really bad. What's going on? Is it HubSpot? Is it the clean theme? I think. Anyway, so what did I do, Ian? I basically cloned the homepage, just a straight copy, and I put it just on a staging link so that it didn't include Google Tag Manager.
Yep.
That's the only difference. And the performance without Google Tag Manager, it shot up to 94%. And I've actually got these screenshots right in the show notes. Okay, so what's the summary from this? The summary is that it's not the platform and it's not the theme. It's actually Google Tag Manager, what you're inserting. And so then what did we do? Well, we went through Google Tag Manager, what you insert. Oh, we've got Hotjar tracking here, and we've got this pixel, and we've got a Reddit lead conversion pixel. We've got all these other pixels on there. All right, oh, okay. Do you need all of these? Oh, we only want Hotjar on some of these landing pages we're testing. Oh, okay, no worries. So we adjusted the triggers in Google Tag Manager, did a whole bunch of things, and that's basically the process. So it went from a conversation around, oh, HubSpot's really slow, to hang on, you're inserting all of this stuff that's slowing it down, and finding the root cause was important. So I want to mention that because I think that's a common experience. People shift platform. They're like, oh, this new platform's slow. But what else did you do when you shifted? Oh, it so happened that we had a new website. Oh, and we wanted to do a whole lot of testing. Oh, and marketing wanted to run these other campaigns. Oh, and now we're doing advertising, and now we've got tracking scripts right, left, and center. Okay, let's go through it bit by bit and make sure we're focused on the right things.
Yeah, and I think if I talk about speed and optimization, one thing, if you're using WordPress, and you've got a good host, you probably got something that like a content delivery network to deliver all of your content and caching. And then you would probably have plugins as well. Now in HubSpot, we don't worry about all of that. That's all taken care of natively within the platform. But if you're on WordPress, you've got to be aware of that, because those are things that can end up biting you or end up making you faster, depending on where you stand and what you've got. All right, let's talk about reporting, because this is another part that often gets overlooked. And how do they compare, Craig? When we talk about HubSpot, you've got analytics built in, right? You've got the website traffic, you've got some conversion tracking, you've got the marketing performance in there, what forms people are converting on, etc. And it can integrate into your Google Meta LinkedIn ads, which is also really good. So you got everything in one place. I think it's generally high level. And I think I want you to talk about the whole cookie thing, because people will have questions about that. But on the other side is that inside WordPress, there is no analytics. You've got to connect to Google Analytics and then get your analytics from there. I'm sure there are some analytics plugins that you can put in there to get that analytics inside WordPress, but essentially you'll be using analytics, whereas HubSpot has an analytics engine in the platform and that it's used. But tell us a bit more about the HubSpot analytics, Craig.
Yeah, well, I just did want to mention, because HubSpot's hosted itself, it's not like having to insert a script for analytics. It knows how many page views a page has had, right? Because it has to render it. So it can report at that at a high level I'm talking about. So it can know, oh, you had this many sessions, and you can kind of trust that. But just to be clear, if people are blocking cookies, it won't appear in their timeline. So if they fill out a form in HubSpot, but they're blocking cookies, often you'll see, oh, there was a form submit, but you see no page views. So that's slightly different. But yeah, at the high level, yeah, you can tell what traffic your site's getting. So I quite like that. To be fair, when we were using WordPress, I think was it Jetpack or one of the tools that did have some kind of analytics kind of out of the box.
Correct.
But
that was a plugin, wasn't it? Or
I think, some kind of plugin it did. Yeah. But yeah, I think with any of those analytics tools, if people are blocking cookies, you run into visibility issues.
All right, onto security and hosting. This is a very big consideration. HubSpot has a fully managed security team and they've got 24/7. They provide you the security certificates. So this is another thing. Here's another story, Craig. I had a customer who had a WordPress site, not a highly trafficked site, something that they used to do. They were like, oh, the website's not working. Anyway, I discover the security certificate has expired. No one got informed. And they were like, I don't know how long this has been going for. Anyway, that would not happen on HubSpot because the security certificate is already there inside already provided with your website. So a good host on WordPress will probably provide you a security certificates like the likes of Kinsta or WP Engine, the two that we've used. And you can actually see that happen. You can actually see that and you don't have to worry about how that is. I've been through hours of work with people trying to get security certificates, buy them and then install them, then make sure they work and etc. But you don't have to worry about all of that. And so we put a link actually to the HubSpot security and the hosting. So you can actually see the level of detail that they go to when they think about how they host and secure your on HubSpot. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is with any hosting, there is service level agreements in place. So again, at the start of the show, I talked about make sure you host it in a good area. And so a good host will actually have a service level agreement to say, hey, we're going to be up 99.9% of the time because they have backups in place or they can switch things. And that's a really key thing. Now, HubSpot never talks about it, but they actually have a reliability score of 99.99 when it comes to their website hosting. I think over the years, Craig, I haven't experienced anything, but Craig said, I think for a couple of minutes somewhere, there was a slight outage, but apart from that, we have not experienced anything over the years that we have been with HubSpot.
I've definitely had one outage, maybe two, over the last, let's say 8 years, I think, but it wasn't for long. And it's, like these are years apart. So very high reliability. And the other thing is there's never downtime due to plugins interfering. So on WordPress with the hosting, it's even if there's downtime, occasionally the host, there's a hosting outage. But most of the time when the sites go down, it's because some plugin got updated and broke something and the site's down.
Correct.
So the site downtime in WordPress issues that we've had over the years hasn't been due to hosting. It's been for other issues. And you never have that with HubSpot. And I just want to say this again, even on the starter or even on the free, but on the starter, you have this world-class security infrastructure and hosting infrastructure there. So it just is a massive pain relief, takes all that headache away.
All right. I'm going to quickly go over some integrations and plugins. So a lot of people say, it's pretty limited when it comes to third-party integrations. And I think in HubSpot, there are lots of integrations because it is a platform, it is open. If there isn't a plugin, well, when I say a plugin, if there isn't a connector, generally you can build it using the API. Same thing in WordPress. Generally there are plugins and then people can build things that talk to WordPress. All right. What happens when you're missing integrations, Craig?
Look, I will call out, I think there are some things missing from HubSpot. The one that comes up all the time for us is Instagram. I just want to integrate Instagram feed into my site. Look, there's nothing out of the box in HubSpot to do that. There's various reasons I won't go into, related to how the Instagram API needs an interim kind of server kind of thing. We do use a third-party tool for that. We've actually got a whole blog post about how we integrate HubSpot into with Instagram, but it's not out of the box, and that's something that WordPress will have, just to be fair. And I think there's some of those things. I want to pull in a feed from whatever, X or Instagram or some other social thing. Or I think WordPress has that all covered. And so there are some limitations there in HubSpot, just to be clear. Have they been problems for our clients? I don't think it's very rare that that's a showstopper. But look, just something to be aware of.
And then the other things that you might want to think about is when it comes to CRM, marketing tools and payments, HubSpot has a lot of that built in now. And WordPress, again, you can integrate Stripe, WooCommerce, HubSpot, MailChimp, whatever you're using. They generally have good integrations through plugins inside WordPress. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is support. And this is a really big differentiator when we're talking to people. HubSpot includes email and in-app chat support if you have a starter plan. If you have professional enterprise, they have phone support as well and chat support that's available. Generally, you will get one of those. Phone support is really good. Within 5 minutes, they'll call you back. And this is sometimes the lifeline you need when you're stuck. WordPress, on the other hand, you might actually, if you have a WordPress managed host, you will probably get support via chat. I've never actually spoken to anyone, but it's always been via chat for hosting. Now, if it's a plugin, like Craig said, and the plugin breaks something, the host is not going to fix that. So that'll generally be a developer or a technical specialist that will have to fix that. I've got one of those at the moment, Craig, where I've got a slider that is broken the entire site where people can't even log into WordPress to change something. I actually don't know what's wrong. I've had to disable the slider. So the slider on our customer site is broken at the minute, just so they could log in and actually do some changes because they discovered the PHP version is out of date. And it was really interesting. I was using Kinsta for the first time. I have discovered that the security on Kinsta has actually been pretty good. All these plugins that are up to date actually have security vulnerabilities. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are there security vulnerabilities in latest updates? And they're just things that you have to be aware of. And I'm glad that they've actually highlighted it because you kind of install an update thinking, oh, it's going to fix something, not realizing that there are actually more problems with it. So, and like Craig said, what it does, and I've been running these updates to bring things up to date, is if something fails, it'll put the site into maintenance mode in WordPress. So they'll get this site is, currently under maintenance, but that's one of the things you've got to be aware of. So that's the kind of support that we get and we're used to. And I think just be aware that that is one of the big differentiators. With a lot of website platforms, we've used Shopify. I think I've only used their chat support once and they were pretty good. Squarespace, I've actually never used their support and I think it's just been email, but I've never spoken to anyone. And that's the big differentiator. HubSpot, you can actually speak to someone.
I can't stress this enough. I think this is so important. And let's call out the differences between you and me and our clients. So for you and me, let's say we're working on WordPress and there's an issue. Okay, so we know, I'll contact WP Engine and chat with them. And by the way, WP Engine, excellent service. We still have a bunch of sites still back on WordPress. I'd love to get them to HubSpot, but for various reasons, they're not. When we have issues, WP Engine customer support's fantastic. So I don't want to say that, HubSpot's support is better. But here's the thing. We've built sites for clients. Now, when the client makes a change to their site and breaks something, they don't know, I'll call WP Engine. They call us. And then we kind of have to call WP Engine or say, what did you do? It just adds to the mix. Whereas if the customer has HubSpot, they make a change in HubSpot and maybe there's something they've done or they deleted something or they don't know. They just contact HubSpot support. That's really the difference. Okay, you've got a problem with your WordPress site. Who do you call? Probably call the agency. If you've got a problem with HubSpot, well, you just contact HubSpot support. They can talk to a partner as well. Maybe that's useful, but it's just so much easier. And the support is excellent. And also, If you're in HubSpot because you're using it for sales or marketing or service and other things, it's like it's the same support. It's just one place to go for support for all your marketing and sales piece. So I think that really is a big differentiator.
All right, quickly onto migration, Craig. Now, when people are migrating, some of the things that is possible and is not possible, the things that are possible is moving your blog content. It can be imported from different sites. That's probably similar to a lot of other platforms. What you can't move very, very well, and you will need to rebuild a lot of the pages or landing pages and a lot of the SEO elements that you're going to have to copy in. And this is across any site. So we built sites across multiple platforms and it's the same story. So if anyone tells you that it's harder to do it one way or the other, usually isn't. It's usually the same process wherever you're going. So just be aware of that.
I think that's right. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in shot 11 as well. But often when you're doing a website refresh project, every 3 to 4 years, you rebuild the website, new design. Let's say, we've changed our site architecture because the product mix has changed the thing. It's like it's a big change. It's not like just a lift and shift. So if you said we just want to lift everything from WordPress to put it into HubSpot, exactly the same content, looks the same, and that I'd be like, why? Why are you doing that? And maybe it's, look, we want to get rid of the hosting hassles. Okay, migration is going to be a key part of that project. But most projects aren't like that. They're like, right, we're doing a website refresh, all these things, and also let's move the platform at the same time as well to a better platform. Okay, then it's not a key. The migration part is not kind of
I'll give you a little example,
block.
Craig. Got a customer who has been on HubSpot for a while, and we suggested to lift their parents to use a new theme. And so one of the things in that process was we used the Power theme. Doing the blog was really easy. They'd actually, when they were doing their blog posts, they were actually doing things. They were formatting it really well, right? Didn't really show on their old site. So when we made the switch, the blog, there were a few things we had to fix, but relatively quickly we made the switch. It looks really good. On the other hand, all the pages, because of the way things have been built, we actually have to create, so we use content staging, we create new pages in content staging and use that so we can use the right components and the right modules, etc. So it's not a really simple, I'll switch the template, it'll work.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing. But I'm so grateful that there is a content staging area where you can build stuff, we can preview it, and then we can publish it, right? And I think that's the benefit. Those are things you can't see until you get into the weeds of doing something. And then you go, I now get why we use HubSpot. So
yeah, actually, I want to extend that thought. And we talked about this when we did the full Content Hub thing. Let's just chat about staging, because the beautiful way that HubSpot has implemented staging, exactly like you said, you can have a few pages, or let's say you've got hundreds of pages in staging. You can publish 3 of them.
Correct.
To live. Now, try and do that on any other platform, and it's actually really hard. So they'll often build, we're in WordPress, let's build a whole staging site. The new site's in WordPress, here's the staging site. You can't kind of say, we'll push a few pages over.
No.
It's like, the whole site goes live.
Correct.
So I just think that's an underrated feature of HubSpot. Yeah, we'll just put that into staging.
Yeah.
Or this section of the site. We're doing a refresh just of this section. Just those 10 pages. Great. And then push them live. The rest are still being worked on in staging.
All right. We're getting near the end, listeners. Let's talk about scalability and future growth. What have you got to say, Craig, when we're talking about scaling your business with your website?
Well, if we look at those scenarios at the start, marketing sites, sales sites and things, it's all built on the CRM. So it's all integrated. So that kind of growth of your site. I just love that, the form's there. Okay, form's in HubSpot. Great. The website's in HubSpot. Great. They fill out a form, goes into the CRM. You can see the timeline. Here's the pages they view. Here's the emails I've sent. Like, that's a business process, all working in HubSpot. Now, can you embed HubSpot forms on WordPress? Yes, of course, you can do that as well. So I'm not saying you can't do it, but just having it all there just allows that. It just lubricates that scalability so well. And so I really feel when you're thinking about putting your website on HubSpot, part of it is, and overall, what's your business doing? What are the business processes? It's not just, here's these pretty pages over here. It's actually, how does this whole thing fit into our business process in general?
All right, we'll quickly touch in terms of limitations of scalability here. I think sometimes HubSpot may feel restrictive with some sort of customizations that people are after. So just be aware of that. Whereas WordPress, on the other hand, allows you unlimited flexibility because you can get in there and tinker with all sorts of things. But generally, we don't tend to find that this is the case. So this is a very minute case to the right. So I wouldn't be too fussed about that.
Just with those limitations, it's really, it's limited if you're trying to make it fit a scenario where it's not a fit.
Correct.
So just go back to the scenarios at the start. Yeah. And those migrating websites, yeah, we've kind of covered that, haven't we?
We kind of covered migration. But I do want to say one thing, right? People will say, oh, can I take my HubSpot website and go somewhere else? No, you can't, right? In the same way, you can take your WordPress website and move it to another host, right? So you're just moving the location. So just think about you moving your house, moving from one place in your city to the next place, and you're just renting that space where you're living. That is like a WordPress website. Now, because HubSpot manages everything, you can't take it anywhere. It is staying on the HubSpot infrastructure. You can obviously get all your content and everything. That is not a problem. No one's keeping your content. Your content is your content, right? Don't be eluded by people saying you'll lose it all or it's not yours because it happens to be on HubSpot. That's not the case. I think that if you understand the concept of how it's operated, it's like I would probably liken HubSpot to like a hotel that's managed. You can't take your hotel room and go home, can you, Craig? But you know everything's going to be done. It's all there. And so that's probably what I'm going to liken it to. So don't be too fussed about that in terms of migration. This is probably not more about migration. It's about moving things around. Just be aware that's what's going to happen.
If I think about the common objections to HubSpot that come up, I have heard that come up. Oh, you're locked into HubSpot. They get you with everything. You've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got your website. They've locked you in. And I'm not sure if that's a bug or that's a feature. Right. I guess it depends the perspective you come from. The thing is, we tried really hard to avoid referencing the term AI in this episode. Yeah. I really wanted to avoid AI, right? But I will say some of the AI tools that are coming, I just feel this whole migrating and taking my content elsewhere is just not going to be an issue in maybe a year or two. I don't know how quickly it'll happen to be, but we've all seen those demos of tools where you just put in the URL of a website and it basically builds it for you, pixel perfect in some other system or straight as HTML and takes everything. I think they're only going to get better. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure most of the platforms will be building those tools that do these migrations because they know it's just an easy way to pull you over. And I think it'll happen both ways. Correct. Pretty sure HubSpot will build their own tool that just pulls it from somewhere else and sets it all up. So I kind of feel that objection will just go away in time because tools will take care of it. But to your point, I think, there still is that. Is it a valid objection? Maybe. I think it depends on your scenario. But like we said earlier, migrations often when you're doing a new website refresh project every couple of years, you're totally rethinking it anyway. So it's not that you're building it from scratch, but you are kind of rethinking it. And so this whole just take it is not really a compelling feature anyway.
All right, on to our final thoughts, Craig. What scenarios should you choose HubSpot and what scenarios should you choose another platform like WordPress or another platform altogether? Tell us.
Well, look, if we call back to our opening shot, what's the scenarios where HubSpot I feel is a perfect fit? It's those marketing sites, it's those sales sites. If that's your scenario, then the question, should you choose HubSpot or should you choose WordPress? I think then it comes down to a few simple points. Let's say the scenario fits marketing or sales, etc. Choose HubSpot if you want that ease of use, all the built-in tools, all the security, all the hosting and the CRM integration. If you want that all-in-one experience as well, sales, marketing, service, operations, and website all in one tool, HubSpot, go HubSpot. And like we said, you don't want to manage hosting and updates or breaking them. But what about WordPress? It could be one of those scenarios, marketing site, sales site. Well, if you need absolutely maximum flexibility, customize, sure, stay with WordPress. You want that full control over everything, integrations and plugins, probably stay with WordPress. And as long as you're comfortable managing all those hosting and security issues, or you've got a team or a developer that does that, sure, stay there. And also, if you want to add a shop, or WooCommerce or some of those things built into WordPress do it. I think often it's about resourcing. If you've got a team of WordPress experts in your business that can look after all that, why would you move from WordPress? Of course you'd stay on WordPress. But often we're chatting with marketing managers. They've got no budget with IT to do, they just want a tool that works that they don't have to have all that other stuff. That's when HubSpot really shines.
And I think the other thing that Craig didn't talk about this time would be if you have been on WordPress, you had lots of comments on your blog and you were trying to migrate that in. That is a time, if you want to keep your comments, that's the time that you would not move off WordPress. So
that's a scenario, where HubSpot's not a fit.
Correct. Because Craig has tried it unsuccessfully.
I've still got a few sites on WordPress for that very reason, Ian. It's just like, especially some of my wife's sites, she's got posts that have thousands of comments. And we want to move them to a HubSpot, but there's no easy way to get all those comments in. So we're stuck on WordPress and probably will be for a while yet.
Well, there it is, listeners. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to learn more, we're going to have a HubSpot SEO course in the community. If you haven't joined the community, I'd encourage you to join. Also, if you want to have the in-depth about this, we went into this with Content Hub in episode 307. So there's a big 80-page plus PDF if you want the really in-depth guide about Content Hub. And also, the next thing, if there's one thing you need to do from here is make sure you sign up to the HubShots Daily Tip. So you'll get a daily tip delivered to your inbox where you can implement that one thing, become 1% better every day. And if you have already done it, well done. Congratulations. And, the whole thing that we strive for is to be 1% better every single day. All right, Craig. Well, until next time.
Catch you later, Ian.